Hello guys, before the story starts, I want to tell you that my previous channel has been hacked and this is my new channel. Please support and subscribe this channel. Let's start the story. I tried to end my cheating quietly, but my loving husband walked in on my last meeting with a fair partner. I'm selfish. That's what I tell myself every night when my house is quiet without my kids. My ex-husband has a good reason to hate me. My immediate family is split and I've never stopped hating myself for what I did. My selfish act happened in 2015 at the age of 39 and I confess I took my ex-husband for granted. He used to call me beautiful daily, wanted closeness, took care of me, and treated me as his equal, not like a queen or princess. We were married for 20 years, high school, sweethearts, each other's only. My family loved him, and he supported my brother through tough times. He was the go-to person when others needed help, a good man. Over the years, I gave him 2 strong boys, 18 and 16, and twin girls, 13. I gained weight, felt self-conscious, but he always told me I was beautiful. Our arguments were rare, but when they happened, they were mostly about closeness, which I wasn't always in the mood for. When I turned 39, my birthday party revealed a new me. After a year in the gym doing yoga and Pilates, I went from 180 to 135 pounds, an amazing transformation for a formerly chubby girl. My ex-husband joined me at the gym but not as much. He went from 260 to 225 pounds, shaping his body. Despite his increased affection, I still wasn't in the mood. We tried dinners, dancing, walks and he helped around the house. He always looked at me with desire even after 20 years, any woman would want that desperately, but mentally, I just wasn't into it. At the time, I thought it was early menopause, having closeness 2 or 3 times a month. I was a one and done. He wanted more, but I refused couple counseling. Then my selfishness took over. A new manager in my office showed interest a few days after my birthday. He was slightly younger and handsome, and for some reason, he took an interest in me. At first, I ignored him, then it turned from ignoring to casual conversation, then he flirted and I showed him my ring. After 2 months of constant flirting, I flirted back, leading to me telling him about my life. I found myself thinking about him more and more. I now realize it was an emotional affair, but at the time, I felt high. My ex-husband suspected something was off. We had a heated argument, one that I honestly believed started when he tried to kiss me. I made a disgusted look not towards my ex. I was thinking about this man when he leaned in and I felt disgusted with the whole thing. At least that's what I tell myself. A week later, I told the new manager to meet me at a cafe to talk. I intended to tell him to leave me alone, that I couldn't do this. But before I could say anything, he kissed me and my mind went blank. That was the start of our 6-month affair. During that time, I did things with him that my ex wanted. I was more eager and willing, always in the mood because it was something new. Although my ex and I had closeness during this time, it wasn't as frequent. I started pushing him away, nitpicking on little habits, even belittling him. I'm ashamed of how I treated him. I only realized what I was doing when my brother visited and told me my ex confided in him about feeling depressed and thinking about separation. He felt that I didn't love him anymore, and he was falling out of love with me. That snapped me out of it. I immediately ended the affair, quit my job, and told myself I would make my husband feel loved and wanted. I was determined to fix this and be a better wife. My affair partner came to my house with a box from my office containing things I asked to be shipped. We talked. He wanted to know what went wrong, and I said I needed to fix my marriage. I told him to leave, but he insisted on one last encounter and foolishly, I agreed. We ended up in the guest room. I don't know how long it lasted, but suddenly he flinched violently. There was a loud bang and my ex was in the room. My app was on the floor and there was a large hole in the wall. I tried to say something to my ex, but his eyes were bloodshot, tears flowing and his lips trembling. He was in so much pain and I felt disgusted. I watched as my app stood up and tried to leave. My ex looked at him and my app told him to step back if he knew what was good for him. So my ex attacked him. I screamed and cried, telling my ex to stop. Out of desperation, I jumped on his back, resulting in me getting slammed to the floor. Everything got hazy for a while. Words sounded muffled. But when I came to, my ex had my app on his side on the phone. All I could do was stare at my app's swollen face and the blood and teeth on the floor beside him. There was a loud bang on the door, and I watched my ex put the phone on speaker, slowly place it on the floor, drop to his knees, and place his hands on the back of his head. The door opened, the police came in, handcuffed him, and the paramedics arrived. I soon learned that he called special services on himself. Everything went downhill at the hospital. My father didn't utter a word, he just looked at me with shame. My brother yelled at me crushed, asking how I could do that to my ex. My mother consoled me, causing my father to yell at her. His family was furious. His sisters threatened, and his parents looked like they wanted to send me to an early grave. I approached my children and they refused to speak to me. My sons couldn't even look at me. My app was heavily injured, needing reconstructive surgery on his face. My ex practically shattered his face. At the hospital, a woman came to my room and immediately attacked me. My brother pulled her off me, and it turned out she was my app's wife. I didn't know he was married. He never wore a ring or said anything. It made me feel even more terrible. Leading to the trial, my boys stayed with their grandparents on my husband's side and my girls refused to talk to me. My ex didn't want to see me either. I tried to visit him at the county and I was denied. My brother made sure my ex went to the correctional facility he worked at to keep an eye on him. When I asked my brother to relay a message for me, he told me to go to hell. During the trial, it was the first time in 3 months that I saw him. He looked at me with such anger, hurting more than anything I could ever imagine. He always looked at me with love even when we were mad at each other. But during that trial, it was hate, and I needed to excuse myself to cry in the restroom. As the days went by, I was forced to recount my affair in every detail for all to hear. When I told them how long it was, my ex looked crushed, and my father stood up and walked out of the courtroom. During my ex's testimony, I learned that he came home to surprise me with lunch and a weekend trip for 2 to the Catskills. He had a full romantic getaway planned only to walk in on us, and he reacted. He stated when the app ordered him to step aside, he snapped and smacked him, only stopping when he tossed me off him. He quickly called special services and we heard the recording in court. Hearing the pain in his voice, his sobs as he did what the operator told him to do was soul-crushing. The app couldn't verbally testify and was heavily medicated, so they used images of what he looked like, turning my stomach because I was responsible for all this. My ex smashed his eye socket, cheekbones, and destroyed his jaw. They stated that there were bone fragments too small to piece together. My former partner got charged with a 3rd-degree felony and got a 7-year sentence, leading my sons to protest loudly, daughters and his family to wail, haunting me still. The initial 3 months were incredibly painful. I got sued by my app's STBX soon-to-be ex-wife for alienation of affection. My ex initiated a divorce. The eldest son moved out, another son isolated himself, and my twins rebelled fiercely. My former sisters-in-law attacked me at Price Chopper. His mother spat in my face when I tried to apologize. My father and brother refused to speak to me. Eventually, I had to find a new job since there was no income and I nearly depleted savings, but I was practically blacklisted in my field. The accounting firm faced bad publicity, so I started working in retail and as a seasonal HR block adjuster during the tax rush. I almost lost the house. My ex refused visits and every letter was returned. Crying in the shower became an almost daily occurrence. My parents almost separated because my mother constantly defended me. My brother refused to acknowledge me. Even lifelong friends were divided. Soon, I contemplated ending things, picking up my belongings and disappearing. The guilt was overwhelming. Eventually, I sought therapy and the therapist scolded me saying I had become too comfortable with my ex. I didn't see him as a husband but as a friend with benefits and I treated him as such. She was right, I took him for granted. Almost a year passed in silence from my children. When I cooked dinner, they would collect their food and go to their rooms, refusing to look at me. I had meltdowns begging them to say something but nothing. My brother got married and I wasn't invited but my kids were. I continued trying to visit my ex, hoping he placed me on the visitor list, but I was always denied. Letters were still being returned, deepening my severe depression. One day, my brother showed up out of the blue. Shockingly, he scolded me, revealing my ex was in the infirmary after getting stabbed during a ravishment attempt by an inmate, resulting in my ex getting stabbed in the stomach, and the inmate getting his spine broken. My brother screamed at me, "You did this before leaving." I cried for days because he was right. I did this. Attempts to visit him at the infirmary were futile. For 4 additional years, I tried to talk to him and wrote letters, but they were returned. Thankfully, our children visited their father frequently and I learned he was placed in protective custody by my brother since the attack. Over the years, my eldest attended the same college and took the same major as my ex. He only calls his siblings and never wants to talk to me. He never comes to the house for holidays, only to his grandparents. Another son followed suit, going to the same college and refusing to call me. My twins were hard on me, but they visited their father weekly, improving their mood. Whenever they got overly rebellious, their uncle disciplined them. My brother and I still hardly spoke. Attempts to visit his wife when they had their first child resulted in being asked to leave. My mother kept me in the loop on what was happening in their lives, but my father still refused to acknowledge me. In early May this year, my kids were happy and my son returned home. I didn't know why and I didn't care they were home. For 4 months, my children were around and I did everything I could to express my apologies. Most of the time, I was ignored, but they started talking to me, bringing me joy to have conversations with them, learning about their lives. My eldest had been dating someone for over a year. My second born was on a college track team and even my girl started talking to me again. It intensified my self-hatred for what I did to them, witnessing them smile, joke and share dinner together. I miss those moments deeply. By the August, I was excited about the twins' first day of their senior year coinciding with their 18th birthday. I shared my enthusiasm for their birthday party, but my girls asked if we could do it on a different day. This confused me, thinking we were starting to get better. When I asked why, one of them said, "Because Dad is throwing us a party and I don't want you near him." This comment shocked me. I asked when their father was released and they said he got out at the April for good behavior, leading to tears as it broke me a bit more. They were around more because he was out, happier and cheerful with their father, back in their lives. It wasn't because we were starting to heal, they had him back. I asked where he was staying and they told me he was staying with my brother. I tried calling, needing to talk to him, but he refused. I went over holding all the returned letters through the years, saw him briefly through the door crack, shouted his name, and was asked to leave by my brother. I handed him the letters and left. In the driveway, I heard his voice, turned around, and he was walking towards me. I instantly started crying, hugged him, and he handed me back my letters coldly saying, "You forgot this." I cried watching him walk away. I begged him, pleaded for him to talk to me, and he just walked back into the house. My children stared at me by the door and they all had no love in their eyes for me. At that moment, I realized my children were just tolerating me. However, I still want to fix this. I want to tell him how selfish I was, how much I missed him, apologize for destroying what we had. So I'm still trying to push through my daily life. I learned from my mother that my almost partner's ex-wife was visiting my ex 2 years ago and she's been coming around to see him. I don't care, really. I just want him to somehow forgive me, talk to me, be beside me, look at me the way he used to. I want my kids beside us. I just want my family back. Yet I know I don't deserve it. Even if by some miracle we become one again, it will never be the same. I was selfish and I wish I could take it all back. Second story. This is a response to my mother's post. I try hard to keep my history secret. My college friends are unaware that my dad spent time in prison, and I'm not interested in sharing it with them. When I roamed around campus and overheard people discussing and sharing a particular post, it brought back a flood of emotions I've been trying to cope with. Investigating further, I found enough details to confirm it was about my family, which made me furious. I contacted my mother and her emotional reaction triggered an argument. Similarly, when I visited my dad and confessed, it led to a confrontation. Despite this, I believe my father is a good man. He only scolded me for disrespecting my mother. He advises me that even if I don't love her, I should still respect her. It's tough to respect someone like her. My father faced many challenges and often emphasized that we should be grateful for growing up in an area where achieving academically wouldn't lead to attacks. He shared how difficult it was for him in the South Bronx, where pursuing white things like going to college made you a target. At 15, my father's father passed away from cancer, and he had to step up as a surrogate parent for his 2 sisters. With no life insurance, he worked hard to contribute to rent and food while attending school. He considers it fortunate that his mother remarried a good man and they moved to upstate New York for a better life. According to my uncle, in the 90s, my dad's unique style including baggy clothes and the Puerto Rican flag shirt attracted teasing from his friends. Unexpectedly, my dad fought back, earning their respect. Instead of walking away, he helped one of them and suggested skipping school, sharing a 40 and talking things out. This led to friendship and he introduced my dad to my mom. They attended the same college and by the end of their freshman year, they were married. During my upbringing, my parents were affectionate, always holding hands and kissing. Even during my senior year when things went awry, despite acting like a teenager in love with my mom, my dad never placed her on a pedestal. He advised me against it, explaining that women won't respect a man who does so. His philosophy, treating your wife as an equal best friend and confidant, was passed down from his father and stepfather. My dad, a big guy at 5 feet 11 inches and 260 pounds, was always joking and active despite his weight. I cherished the moments when he sang to my mom and did thoughtful gestures like serenading her, buying flowers, and writing love notes for no reason. He defended her honor and always expressed how beautiful she was. My dad set an example for the kind of man girls should have in their lives. He stood by my uncle, never giving up on him even when others thought he was a lost cause. As my grandfather once said, my dad knocked the stupid out of him and left behind the man he was supposed to be, a phrase that always made me laugh. My dad showed me how to be a man, a friend, and a husband. Before her affair, my mother always loved my dad, and he was her support system. Even though they had the ideal marriage, my mom ruined it. I remember those months when she talked down to my father, and he pushed back but restrained himself. Despite his college education and successful career as a financial advisor, my dad could switch from zero to a more assertive demeanor in seconds. Grandma said he was like his father, kind, respectable, and helpful, but he wouldn't hesitate to defend himself with strength. My dad tried everything, buying flowers, taking her out to dinner, dancing, but she was in her own world, treating him poorly. We all witnessed it, especially its impact on my brother and twin sisters. Despite that, my dad smiled and assured us they would work it out. He believed mom was stressed from work, especially when she quit her job. I genuinely thought her job was the issue. Then my dad got arrested. Mom, do you know the embarrassment we felt when the whole school was talking about it? Dad was arrested because you cheated. I couldn't stand to look at you, so I stayed at grandma's. The sight of you disgusted me. And when I visited Dad, he couldn't bear to look at me. He was ashamed and said he failed as a husband and as a man. I told him he didn't, but he insisted he did because a responsible man would think about the consequences before doing something so foolish. As a husband, he felt he failed because his wife betrayed him. I pleaded with him to look at me, but he wouldn't. Then you had the audacity to ask us for forgiveness, and for the first time in my life, I wanted to physically hurt you. We were all hurting and you sought forgiveness. Sitting through that trial, listening to that special services call was the worst 25 minutes of my life. 25 minutes of hearing my father, who would have done anything for you, crying and asking the operator for help. He repeated over and over that the love of his life cheating hurt us more than anything. I know you tried to act as a character witness for Dad. We all told you not to do it, but you did it anyway. Why did you want to show us that you still loved him? Tell the court he is a good man in my opinion. That cross-examination where you revealed how long you were with that person was why we lost him. If we had a proper lawyer instead of an appointed one, he might have walked. I had anger issues because of that. My brother became a closet drinker and one of the twins was suicidal. But you didn't notice. All you wanted was to try and fix things with Dad, leaving me to support my siblings. I hated you and in some way, I still do. When I went to college, I wanted nothing to do with you. Like my father, I had to be a surrogate parent to my siblings. I was working a full-time job, going to college and sending you money for bills. Mom, I know it was hard and you were depressed, but you had help with the bills. Grandma defended you out of family loyalty, not belief. At least that's what the twins believe. When Dad got stabbed, I almost had a breakdown. I had just seen him that day making jokes about the prison body plan. I was halfway back to school when I got the phone call. I nearly crashed the car because my brain turned off. It was tough for everybody. I didn't tell anyone this, but I sat outside that person's apartment wanting to confront him. When I saw him walking with that cane, I remembered what Dad said and drove off. As the years passed, Grandma died, then Grandpa from broken heart syndrome, and Dad couldn't attend the funeral. Did you know that both his sisters got married in the waiting area so he could give them away? The damage you've done is tremendous. And it didn't help that you kept asking us to forgive you, to give you another chance. You never gave us a room to comprehend, to heal, you just kept asking. And all I see is that you wanted to make yourself feel better. You didn't give a damn. You didn't try, you just gave us space and acted as if we were supposed to suddenly act normal again. Yes, you did try in the later years, but not during the time you were supposed to when it was most important. When Dad got out, he told us to start talking to you, saying you're a good mother, so we did. And it made you happy for a while. I remembered what it was like not to hate you. Dad had issues finding work initially, but one of his old clients hired him. I didn't expect the twins to drop that bomb on you. Dad didn't want you to know he was out. When you appeared, it bothered him. He threw up after speaking to you, saying the very sight of you sickened him. She's been seeing Dad weekly for over 3 years, and they've been spending time together since he got out. So please stop fantasizing about getting back together. If you want to talk or fix things with your children, call me. Your post last week about our worst moment was pure selfishness, as dad sees you only as the mother of his children, nothing more.